It's great to hear about your real estate strategies, your investment strategies. Obviously, you received some very valuable money lessons growing up, and you've been making all the right decisions, it seems, from a early age. But I want to hear about one of the money mistakes that you've made.
This is actually another one that I've never shared publicly, one that I actually would say I still think about. So in one sense, I don't have regret about it because I operated in what I knew at the time. But in another sense, I do because I'm like, oh my goodness, I knew what was up. It wasn't many years after I had started buying properties in that area, the same area where I paid $50,000 for that first duplex because I started to continue acquiring more. But there was a deal. And oh man, this is going to kind of bring me to a place. But there was someone who was looking to sell 9 of those for 60,000 each. They didn't want to break off any of them because trust me, if I could have gotten all 9, I would have offered 540,000, which would have been the equivalent of 60,000 for each of the 9. The issue that I was running into at the time was I wasn't legally allowed to have 9 mortgages because coming out of the Great Recession, there were much tighter restrictions and regulations on things around housing and lending practices and things like that. So the regret, or however you want to look at it, was that I really stayed within the box of what I knew. I tried to figure out how to get it amongst those that were around me and just what I understood. But I definitely wish I would have pushed much harder of just taking a stance of saying, I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm going to find a way, not by hook or by crook, legally and ethically, to be able to get the funds. I did talk to someone who would have had a large amount and I would have paid them a percentage just to be able to get access to it, but I gave up too easily.
How much is it worth today?
That's exactly. Because right now the people listening are like, oh, give yourself a break. It's not that big of a deal. I feel extremely confident that I could have gotten all 9 of them at 60,000 apiece or $540,000 total. These properties were going for over 200 grand. Not that long ago.
I'm sorry, it hurts.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
So for the listeners, those that, hey, math may not be a thing. If I just round it down and say 200,000 times 9, that's 1.8 million against what you acquiring at 540,000. And by the way, all of them were cash flowing too.
Oh my.
So they were making money too. And there were easy wins because I was already a real estate investor. So I was already a landlord. So it wasn't like I had no experience with managing properties. I had a great property manager, knew I could have negotiated getting the property management fees down because now that's 9 more properties or 18 more units that I'm bringing into the fold for them. And there were easy things that needed to be done that would have given the tenants value, but also increased the rents because things would have been repaired or tended to. Because I've always had a mentality of, hey, I treat tenants with dignity, honor, respect as people. I don't look at it as just, oh, this is just money to be made. I'm like, no, people have chosen to make these units their home, their sanctuary of rest and joy and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to reasonably, but still meaningfully do things to reinvest in them. But they were already cash flowing very nicely. Like, I don't really want to say how much it was already making annually after expenses. You're going to make me cry. You're going to put me on the couch, man.
You've said enough. I'm not even going to go there. But I think that you also have to give yourself some slack because you have more information and more knowledge now. You know more about the resources than back then. It is a tough pill to swallow. I'm not going to lie. But what's the lesson that we can learn from this?
When you have an edge, when you have knowledge, some type of market edge or whatever the case may be, go big. Go big, because part of why I gave up ultimately so easily in that situation was just because I was playing small, because I'm like, that amount of money was more than what I had at the time. So it would have been a big risk, because if I had said, hey, I'm not taking no for an answer, what it would have meant is, hey, I would have been taking on a lot more debt, whether I just got a personal entity or got some type of private loan where you're saying 20% down on 540,000. What would be left would be 432 grand of what the loan would be, which is a lot. Like, it's close to $500,000 for a guy in his 20s. So there was probably some just playing too small. I don't know, maybe fear or insecurity. I couldn't tell you precisely what it was, but something stopped me from saying, even though I know these things are going to appreciate, something stopped me from going all out and saying, hey, even though I don't have the answers in front of me of how to do this, I'm literally going to go until I get a yes, because this is a transformative amount of funds that could be made. Literally, we're probably talking really to the tune of at least $2 million.
I like what you just said now. Actually, I don't know if you mentioned this on the podcast, but I've read or I've heard you on other podcasts say that you are a debt-free millionaire. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear now about your decision to be debt-free, because if I'm expanding on what you're saying, then why not leverage debt to continue to build your real estate portfolio?
Right. You're really hitting the nail on the head of where I was at. My understanding was, oh man, well, what if I have this much debt? I know I don't have that much money to be able to pay for this. If this goes sideways, now I'm having to work to keep these properties up and rolling. It was beyond what I could handle. It really would have meant that the investment would have had to work. But the reality is, it would have worked.
Because
But I
it was
was
already working.
exactly, because it was already working. And I've got a different relationship with even how I view debt. Ultimately, I look at debt as, I understand that it is something that you do have to pay back, but there's bad debt of where you're going into debt for things that don't go up in value. That's really how I would define, quote unquote, bad debt. And some people, again, I've never said this publicly either, what I'm about to say, but some people say good debt and bad debt. I won't call it good debt. I call it strategic debt, because you do have to pay it back. Like, because if you're called on it and they say, hey, we need you to pay it back, now you're in a spot where you have to pay it back. But strategic debt says, I'm acquiring this debt to get access to an asset that goes up in value and potentially generates income or cash flow that has a surplus beyond the debt payments I have to make. So yes, I am a debt-free millionaire, which includes even my home is paid off, which that was just a personal decision to do that.